Ugh. Wow, there's like a major lag going on with my face cam today. I don't know why that is. Super weird. One sec. Hey, Billy. Hey, Mark. Yeah, we're gonna try to fix that. One sec. Maybe that's why the lag is even happening. I don't know. That looks a bit better. Hey, Aaron. And yes, we have. One sec here. So hopefully the exposure is better, and hopefully that will also maybe. That looks like it's a bit. Yeah, that looks better. Because the exposure was fucking it up. Also, I forgot to post my Instagram ad here, so I'm gonna do that. This webcam, by the way, is pretty old. I've had it for quite a while. But when I was first kind of like getting set up for Twitch, I was during my research I found out that if you have when you're using multiple webcams, if they're both the same, um, they are they're really prone to glitching, and that made me kind of not so anxious to get another webcam because this one was going to be kind of small anyway, so it didn't have to be super high res. And you know, why invite trouble? It's already different, so why not? But it's also been used a lot for the last couple of years thanks to COVID. So who knows? My phone is lagging like crazy here too. There we go. There we go. Alright, we are officially up and running. Hey, Billy. Yeah, this is at least that old as well. Okay, one more thing here before I dive into fully into work mode here. Thanks, Aaron. I haven't been to the Rio in a long time, but I love the Rio. Alright, so we're drawing Storm tonight. This is one of my own personal request lists, one that I've wanted to draw for a while. In fact, I thought I was going to do it quite a while ago, but then requests came in, seasonal stuff came in. I want to do some Christmas drawings and things. So, if you guys remember when I made, hang on, I'm reaching around here for my reference. You guys may or may not remember when I did. I guess whenever Venom came out, like Let There Be Carnage, I did a Venom and Carnage stream. My reference that I printed out for Storm is on the same page as that. That and Ninja Turtles. And another thing that I ended up not doing, which was originally intended for Halloween. So I guess I thought I was going to do this back in October, or maybe even September, and just never got to it. But I'm finally doing it. I've always liked Storm, and I was going to do a very specific iteration of Storm as well. So let's do it, shall we? And while we're doing it, how are you guys? What are we up to as we watch tonight? How's this Tuesday treating you? that your after work ritual, or was it a rough day? Nothing fancy. I'm not 100% settled on what her pose is going to be, but it's not going to be too off the mark from like fairly classic storm poses. So, hey Michelle, making food. Gotcha, gotcha. I had a pretty long day myself. Getting ready for Fan Expo, right? And I might have said this last week, I can't remember, but I was kind of putting it off. Putting off a lot of the stuff because for a while there I wasn't 100% sure if it was going to get canceled or not because of COVID. And then a week or so ago, finally kind of clued in, like, nope, I guess this is going to happen. And ordered my prints, and I had to go pick them up today. And because of COVID, the print shop has like kind of different than typical hours, and so they're only open from like on weekdays from 11 to 4, which makes it not the easiest to kind of schedule around, you know. And today I had a morning class, and then I had a tech screening in the afternoon, but they changed the tech screening to be online at the last minute because of a technical issue, and then bumped it from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., which gave me a 2-hour gap. So it was like godsend, perfect. I can go get my prints, but then I realized some other stuff I wanted to pick up while I was at it, and didn't account for the fact that I had like almost 500 prints that I had to carry back from the West End to SkyTrain to get home in time for the tech screening. So that was hectic and tiring. And then since getting back and doing the tech screening, I've been kind of like organizing and doing all my shit for the expo. And there's a lot to do. I kind of thought I was pretty much ready to go on it in a lot of respects, but kind of took for granted that like I got quite a few new prints to add to the mix because it's been so long and I've accumulated so much new art because of the length of time, and it added up. Yeah, there's 10 new 11x17 prints, 16 new 8.5 by 11 prints, and 16 new postcard size 4x6 prints, and 10 copies of each. So yeah, it was a lot. Thanks, dude. I was also really hoping to finish the current chapter of Combat Fairies that I'm on this week before the Fan Expo, so I didn't have this like almost finished thing kind of hanging over me, but I might have to admit defeat on that one. I don't know. It was also one of those frustrating days too, where you kind of just like you feel like, you know, like I took a stack of prints. But it's okay. So last time I was at Fan Expo, I had a binder that I kept all my prints in, but it was already pretty full, and I realized it wasn't gonna really work now, and it wasn't the most efficient for getting stuff in and out of. It's also in a long roundabout way, the reason my Etsy store is currently defunct, but I'm gonna get back up and running probably fairly soon. So I got this new like carry case. I had to transfer all my prints over and set up this whole alphabetized system so I can more easily find shit when people want it. And so I was like moving stuff around, and like every time I sat something down, it would fall off the table, like just Murphy's Law and gravity just being a dick to me today, it felt like. One of those days. I got mixed feelings about that hand. I might change that hand. But we'll see. By the way, thanks for the follow, Moonwolf. I think that came in since last time. I mentioned I have a very specific iteration of Storm in mind for this. Does anybody want to guess what that might be? Aurora Monroe, yeah. Or Aurora, I think it's O-R-O-R, I think, or O-R-O-R-O, Ororo, something like that. Storm is a very cool character that I don't think really got her due in the movies. I don't think Halle was a bad casting choice, but they just didn't give her much to do. It is not the Halle Berry version, no. It is a comic book iteration, I will say, but a very specific era of the comics, which you might not immediately think of, but I bet you have seen. I don't remember if that's the case, Billy, but I know that she thinks, like, part of her backstory is that for a while there was like a tribe in Africa or something that thought she was a goddess, and she actually kind of believed it for a while. So that kind of adds a bit of an air of mysticism to her backstory. But I don't think she actually has any magical properties. But I could be wrong. I just might not be aware. I'm gonna... This is new, by the way. I was trying to find one of those like a year ago, and it was really hard to find, and I just stumbled on it when I was looking for something else the other day. Storm is the descendant of an ancient line of African priestesses, all of whom have white hair, blue eyes, and the potential to wield magic. Okay, there you go. I sit corrected then. I am going to take some liberties with this design. I'm going to add some elements from some of her other iterations, as well as some of my own. I think I'm going to give her the lightning bolt earring she had in the animated series. But I'm also going to add these ear studs, which I don't think she ever had before. Could be wrong. Okay, we're about to add what might be the most defining thing about this particular version of Storm. We're doing Mohawk Storm. Well, that's cool. She also married T'Challa at one point. Relatively recently, I think, by comic book standards anyway, considering how long so much of this has been going. So because of my exaggerated pose and exaggerated mouth especially, I'm going to need to exaggerate this collar she's wearing, if anybody's going to be able to see it. You guys probably can't see that. This is very... Wow. The hand looks good, the white... Yeah. I'll be inking this soon. This probably won't be too long of a stream, I'm thinking. Oh, I forgot about that. Actually, I don't know if I knew about the anti-mutant thing, but that actually, did they divorce or did he die? Because I think T'Challa has died and come back at some point in the comic in relatively recent years. I think that might be... I think Storm actually took over for him as Black Panther, in fact, briefly, if I'm remembering correctly. Adding some extra details to her. Try to stay away from this kind of excessive little things when it's going to be in a comic or something, where I'm going to have to draw it a lot, you know? But for a stream drawing, it's not that big of a deal. Drawing this stuff once isn't that bad. Oh, really? I could have sworn they got married. Alright. Well, shut me up then. She doesn't have the tear in her shirt, but it feels very like rocker chick, which is kind of the overall look that she's got going here. So I thought I'd roll with that. Yeah, I could have sworn she did, Aaron. But it wasn't a run that I ever read myself, so I trust Billy's research. Okay. X-Men Apocalypse, like the movie, wasn't the best, but I thought their casting and costuming of young Storm was pretty on point. Character once again not given enough to do, but again, this version didn't have the ripped pants, but we're taking some liberties here. And give her some slightly more intense treads on these boots of hers too. Do a few more cuts in her jeans. It's actually kind of hilarious if you Wikipedia almost any comic book character or any that's been going on for a while at least, because just the just the sheer amount of backstory for everybody at this point is insane. Put some straps on the boots. Make these boots strapping, you might say. Or you might not. Who am I to say? Arctic winds heed my call. Okay, controlling the weather wouldn't be like top of my list for superpowers, but I bet it would be the coolest party trick. What the fuck? Okay, so even if we're wrong about the marriage, we confirmed that they dated, so that's concerning. Toss a couple bracelets on her there too. Why is incest kind of a vampire thing? Alright, I think we can go ahead and start inking this thing. I like that, Michelle. Now that you put that idea in my head, I would honestly probably do the same thing sometimes. What? I like the idea of having the ability to change, like control the weather, but you describe it to people as the ability to cancel plans. I think that's a fun way to look at it. All right, let's start with all the inking, shall we? By the way, I've showed I mentioned how long I had the reference for this printed out. I had wanted to do this for quite a while before I even got that reference. This drawing's been a long time coming. First time I ever saw Storm with the mohawk look was when I was a kid. Science World did a superhero exhibit where they kind of explained the theoretical science behind all the superheroes. And the exhibit had walls set up with all the characters printed on them and stuff. And in the X-Men exhibit or whatever, there was a shot of Storm dressed like this. And at that point, I'd gotten pretty heavily into X-Men at that point, but I hadn't read the comics really too much, so I'd never seen that before. They split after Namor and the Atlanteans devastated Wakanda. Okay. Have we gotten back to the incest element of things? Or are they related by marriage? Is that what it was? Okay. But she gets around pretty easily. She's a flyer. Or I guess you're pointing that out in terms of being related. Oh, to be fair, I have a cousin in New Zealand, so... Yeah, and didn't Professor X meet her when she tried to pick his pocket or something like that? Okay. And then does he not find her again until she's way older? Because I think that part of the timeline always confused me. Because I feel like there was flashbacks that sometimes would show her as a kid meeting him, and then but then she also had that time where she was older and believed she was a goddess and stuff. And how the two things kind of counteracted each other a little bit. Uh, was the psychic that attacked him related to the Shadow King at all? Yeah. It's I always like with all the X-Men, well, any superheroes in general, I guess, but you see it most commonly with X-Men. I feel like because their powers are so varied, but just anytime they use them to do kind of mundane day-to-day tasks, it's kind of cool. Okay, another piece of the puzzle falls into place. Yeah, know, something I always thought was kind of weird in the cartoon, kind of bugged me as a kid, is the first time you see her in the pilot episode of the cartoon, her and Rogue are shopping, and Rogue is more or less in her X-Men uniform already, but Storm is dressed like pretty casually, and then when the action starts, she kind of just like magically morphs into her X-Men uniform, and she never did that again after. And I was always like, as a kid, I was like, oh, that's cool, but then they never did it. So when I would rewatch again, so when I would rewatch it in reruns, I was kind of like, well, wait, did they just fuck up and got too lazy with the costume idea then? These are the questions that must be answered. I actually got the Art of X-Men the Animated Series for Christmas, not this past year, but the year before it. Very cool book. Actually, here's a fun fact about the cartoon. So the first season was heavily serialized, right? Like almost every episode led into the next episode, and that's part of what made it cool, and part of what made the writing so strong. But the animation was being outsourced to multiple studios, and if one studio fell behind with the animation, they couldn't just switch to a different episode for that instead, because the story wouldn't make sense. So for season 2, Fox Kids insisted that they scrap the idea of doing it serialized, so that they wouldn't have to wait for the episodes to finish in order. But the creators recognized that this was a big part of what made that first season so successful, so they didn't want to lose that idea. So what they did instead was they wrote every episode to be episodic and standalone, but they reserved like 5 minutes of every episode to... So they set up early on that Professor X and Magneto get lost in the Savage Land, and then they reserve 5 minutes in every episode after that to catch up with them in the Savage Land. So even though the A story of every episode would be standalone, the B story would continue that ongoing arc. So they could just cut whatever scene they could just cut the next Professor X Magneto scene into whatever episode was ready to go next, so that the whole thing felt serialized even though it technically wasn't, which I thought was super clever. And kind of inspiring to hear how they kind of worked around that. Yeah. And then for season 3, their cheat was, instead of it being like a big arc over the whole season, they did like 3 5-part episodes, and they kind of sold it to Fox that way. It was like, oh, well, it's a 5-part episode. It's too begin, like, you always let us do those kind of thing. And they're like, oh, okay. And that's kind of, they just kind of kept finding loopholes to get around it. Sneaky bastards. But the best kinds of sneaky bastards. It wouldn't surprise me. Like, it probably has happened, but you don't necessarily... If it's done well, you don't necessarily realize it while you're watching it, right? So without actually hearing it behind the scenes to acknowledge that, wouldn't necessarily know it, I guess. In the age of streaming, so many shows are completed from beginning to end before they even go live anyway that I think it would be less necessary. But I could definitely, I think, see somebody taking that approach if that wasn't the case. Are you leading to another question, Aaron? Or are you referring to the earlier question as the weird question? Yeah. I have some kind of terrible but also kind of funny advice about being a showrunner from Max Landis. And he said, "Don't be a showrunner." I met Max. I went to get his autograph on a comic when he was at Golden Age Collectibles a few years ago, and right as I was about to go up to the table, he was here shooting Dirk Gently, and right as I was about to go up to the table, um, he got a call from somebody related to the show and something he had to deal with, and he kind of had to give him shit. And he's like, "I told you I'm doing this event. I can't help right now, whatever." And then he asked me what, and then so once he was talking to me, it was like, "So what do you do?" And I was like, "I teach at Vancouver Film School." And he was like, "Oh, that's cool. Tell your students not to be a showrunner," because he was just pissed off about having to constantly answer questions and stuff, never getting a chance to himself. He seemed like a very nice guy, but apparently not the best guy. He got called out for some shit. I don't actually remember exactly what it was, but it was disappointing to hear for sure. So I'm not necessarily promoting Max Landis, but I thought that was a funny story. Yeah. Well, no, I think it's totally worth going for. I wouldn't be opposed to doing it if the opportunity arose. It's not something at least at the moment, actively pursuing, but I do have an idea for a show I would potentially pitch one day, but um, assuming I could get myself in the room to do it. But it's not one that's developed to the point where I'm like super excited for it. Where I'm like, hey, this is what I want to devote my time to, trying to get off the ground. I think my one thing with a show is I feel like, well, okay, it's very much a writer's medium, which I very much appreciate, and I like the idea of telling long form stories. It's part of why I do the comics, right? But it's also like, if if you get on a show, then you're working on that one thing for a really long time. Whereas if you movies or whatever, you can kind of dip your toe into a lot of different stories, but not without their own restrictions as well. And I think that's where I get a little hung up. I'm like, but that's a personal thing. That's not knocking the idea of it at all. And even when with me saying that, if executive at Amazon or Netflix saw something of mine, they were like, "We want to be in the Dylan Moore business. What kind of show do you have?" I would probably try to put something together pretty much right away. I would definitely take that opportunity. It's just not something I'm actively going after. Yeah, for sure. Well, and you go in with a very specific idea, and if you're not willing to take the notes and potentially go in another direction, you might not. You might kind of lose your opportunity there, right? Let's pump the camera. Are we still good? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And even yeah, even when you're not working with a studio or something, even if it's something entirely on your own, like even if every idea is great, doesn't mean that every idea needs to be in that one project, you know? Yep, definitely a bit of right place, right time for sure. Could you do that with the weather powers? Would that be would that be a thing? I didn't know that was a thing she could do either. I'm learning so much about Storm today. Huh. Well, that's kind of cool. Huh. Yeah, you're right. She is starting to sound pretty OP, isn't she? I think her pants in the original comic, this version of her, are actually supposed to be leather, but I'm making them jeans. The vest is going to be leather, though. The shit ain't going to stay white, guys. Which coincidentally is the same thing I tend to say anytime I buy a piece of white clothing. Even the shirt I'm wearing now is looking a little grayer than I would like. It's one of my favorite shirts too. In the cartoon, they did that like alternate, like Age of Apocalypse or whatever scenario it was. I can't remember, some possible future, and they did Mohawk Storm, and that's the one that hooked up with Wolverine. But in the comics, this was just her look for a while, and I don't think she hooked up with Wolverine during that time. Jesus. See, I think that there is a certain amount of cause and effect with all these different things to kind of explain it. Like, there is some justification for it, but it's also, like, at a certain point, it's a bit much, you know? I think it's just, like, different writers add different, expand on the abilities to kind of help with whatever stories they want to tell. And then when you actually add them all up, it's just like, okay, what can't she do at this point? Wow. Well, whose fault is that, Aaron? Yeah, I was humming that earlier today. I hope, and I honestly wouldn't be that shocked if they do this, but I hope they bring that music back for whenever Marvel does do their reboot of the X-Men movies. And I think it's something Kevin Feige might do. I could see him doing it. Just like when they got Spider-Man back, the opening riff of the music is dun 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 dun. Like I think they might do it. I could see it happening. As in, like they all went to a psychic and they read the cards. Is she not claustrophobic anymore? Because that was a huge part of in the cartoon. Because she was caught in a collapsing building or something. Wasn't she when she was a kid? One of the combat fairies is claustrophobic, by the way, and that was definitely inspired a bit by Storm. Well, a mix of both. I was kind of writing her backstory, and then I realized that, like, I needed to... It's Brietta who's got the rocket and the fucked up wing. And when I came up with I wanted her to have the rocket, and I wanted it to be because she had a fucked up wing. And came up with an idea of her getting crushed in a mine, and that's how she got the wing messed up. And then I thought, I feel like if that happened to me, I would probably have a problem with enclosed spaces. And then I thought of Storm, and I was like, you know what, let's do that. That'll work well for Storm. Well, kinda. Work well from a story standpoint, maybe not for her personally. Right. Combat fairy lore, indeed. Remember the original Hellions? I don't know if I know. Oh, I can't. Okay, remind me about the Hellions, Billy. I feel like that is one I know, but I'm not offhand remembering. Okay. And that makes sense. I wondered if it was related because she was part of the Hellfire Club, and Hellion sounds like a spin-off of that. See, all this is just pointing out how cool and badass Storm is. It just makes it that much more annoying that they did so little with her in the movies. I'm trying to think what angle I want to approach this other. Okay. Yeah. Night, Mark. Have a good one. Thanks for coming by. Do you guys know those things where like it'd be like a picture and it looks kind of fucked up, but then you slide, it almost looks like interlaced or something, and then you slide this plastic on it with all these black lines, and when you slide it back and forth, it kind of creates this weird effect that almost makes it look like animated. You guys know what I'm talking about? Because sometimes when I'm doing these really tight cross hatchings, it almost does this weird optical illusion to my eye while I'm doing it, and it makes me think of those. I kind of doubt that comes across on camera while you're watching, but it trips me up sometimes while I'm staring at my work as I'm doing it. I used to have a Simpsons calendar that was like that, and it was a really cool calendar, but at the same time it was kind of shitty because it was like, it was cool if you put the plastic thing in and slid it back and forth. But if you weren't doing that, it looked like shit. And 9 times out of 10, it's just sitting on the screen or on the wall without that happening. So neat idea, but somewhat ill-conceived, I think. Do you know what that's called, Billy? There's a name for that? It's one of those things where I don't even know how I would really effectively Google that to find out what it's called. Like, the name of the plastic thing with the lines. One of these days, I want to do a big team shot of the 90s animated X-Men lineup. But I kind of like the idea of doing standalone versions of each character first, but maybe in like an alternate version. So like I did Weapon X for Wolverine last year, and I'm doing Storm now. Maybe I could do like Savage Land Rogue. I'm trying to think of another version of Beast I could maybe do. I've been wanting to do a Phoenix drawing as well. I could do that. Linear zoetropes. That would make sense. That phrasing tracks. Do you guys remember what a zoetrope is from my first class of classical animation? Anybody? Anybody? Maybe you already knew before I even told you anyway. There you go, it's the spinning circle thing. You know what's funny, Michelle? As I was asking that, I was thinking like, I wonder how you even describe that in a in like text form, but you nailed it. You got it. You got it. Also, a way to put it too, Billy. You also got it. It's also the name of Francis Ford Coppola's production company, American Zoetrope. We're almost there, guys. Just gonna spot black it, and then I'm gonna use the brush for her boots and her vest. I did consider doing a background of sorts for this, but I'm deciding not to do that because I got some cool ideas for some background stuff and some additional effects that I might do when I color her, because I'll definitely color her. And it'll be easier if I don't go crazy with the background. Leaving it open for color, as they sometimes say. Thursday's drawing this week, by the way. First of all, it's probably going to be a long one. I'm going to brace myself for that. But it's an original thing. Well, actually, I'll tell you, it's a Combat Fairies thing. It's a cover for one of the Volume 2 chapters, which specific reason why I wanted to do this one on the stream. And I'll save that for when I do it. But the layout of it, unless I change my mind between now and then, is actually going to be inspired by an X-Men cover. But you'll have to wait and see why and how. Linear zoetropes mostly describe images along a long stretch of a wall, so when a vehicle like a car or train goes by, it looks like it's moving, but it's also described as an opaque linear screen. Okay, cool. I started thinking it wasn't quite what I was describing, but that second part answered the question. Now for the brush. For the leather vest and... Oh, actually, you know what? Just one thing. Just the leather vest and the leather boots. But I will do this part with the Sharpie because it's very narrow and doesn't really need a glare. Alright, here we go. Wish me luck. playing right now? Yeah. Not the first time we've heard it, but I agree. There we go. One side of the vest. Here's the easy side of the vest coming up here, I guess. Or as they call them in France, la boots. Guys didn't know I spoke French, did you? I'm full of surprises. I'm of many talents. There we go, guys. I think she's done. Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, I considered doing a black background and highlighting some like lightning bolts and stuff, but I think I wanted to save that to do digitally because I think I can do some pretty cool stuff with it. If I kind of save it for that, do a more painterly effect for it. So I'm gonna hold off on that. Thanks, Aaron. It's actually super satisfying using the brush for the leather bits, but it doesn't always make sense to do it. Thanks, Billy. Thanks, Michelle. I think she's pretty badass myself. I'm not saying that about my art. I'm just saying that about the character and this particular version of her. I'll be back on Thursday for my my regular time, like usual. Do an original one. And then next week, I'm probably going to do the, well, I'll tell you, the character design challenge this month is Ninja Turtles. So I'm going to do that on Tuesday, but I haven't decided what. I had an idea for one that was, like, pretty obscure, and I thought that would be kind of part of what the attraction, part of the idea was that, oh, no one else was going to do that one, but then somebody did. I might still do it because it might be kind of a fun one to do, but it kind of took the wind out of my sails a bit, so I might change it up. So you'll have to wait and find out which character I go with, but that'll be next Tuesday. But maybe I'll see you on Thursday for an original one for a comic book cover. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good night. See you next time.